This video is all about appendages, adding your arms, legs, wings, claws, all those little features of your monster. This demo might seem a little disjointed, but just bear with me. So at this point, you should have your body of your monster created, as well as the head or heads should be attached. Rule of thumb though, we need to score and slip all attachments. Anything that you're attaching to the surface, even if it's just decoration, you must score and slip. It's also a good idea to blend them into the surface, and you do have clay tools to do that with. So obviously there are different ways to deal with arms. I'm going to demo this technique first using coils, and then I'll show you how to use a slab. So let's talk about arms. Make an arm using a coil. What you do is you start with a ball of clay and then you roll it back and forth, and then you form this little dog poo kind of shape. That's the basis of a coil. And then you actually roll it on your table using one or two hands. We're going to have a whole project later on how to work with coils, but you want to end up with a coil. And remember, we don't want clay any thicker than your thumb. I'm going to go ahead and just trim this a little bit. Now I can also just pull the clay a little bit. So now I've created the basis for an arm. If you want your arm to be more like a slug, like a big thick piece of clay, what you can do is take a piece of clay, flatten it with your hands, don't make it too thin, and then using your needle tool, you can draw the shape that you plan to cut out, right? This would be this shape I'll be cutting out using my fettling knife. And then I can actually attach it to the surface. Something like that. Demonstrate how to attach both types. So here is the one type of hand. So I'm going to end up, or arm, I'm going to actually attach it here along the body. You could also attach it where it's like coming off the side of the body, but you have to think about the surface area, which means how much clay is going to attach, right? Let's say if I want to attach it like that, like it has its hand on its hip, but for this, I'm going to attach it more like that, which means I'm going to need to score as well as score the surface where it's being attached to. Here's a quick tip. You can actually just hold the piece of clay on the body, make a couple marks with your clay, with your tool, right? I have these tiny little marks here. Now I kind of have an idea where I'm going to be attaching the arm, and then I'm going to get some slip on here and I'm going to attach it. And just like I mentioned, you do need to blend it on to the surface of the body. Now I don't want to blend the entire arm, but I do need to blend the shoulder. Now I can always, if this, that looks a little weird, right? So I can always score and slip a little bit more clay on top if I want to thicken that up. Okay, so there are ways to kind of thicken up the clay surface, but just make sure you blend that all together. Also make sure you're taking a tool to hide any score marks. That's definitely something you want to do as you're working, because that's part of your craftsmanship for the grade for the project. Now to add this type of arm, again, you want to make sure, maybe I have a texture on here, but to attach it, it's the same thing. We need to score and we need to figure out where we want this to go. So I'm going to attach, I'm scoring here on the body. Again, scoring, you want to make sure you have enough marks in the clay, add some slip, and then I can attach it. But same thing, right? I need to actually blend this together right here. That's going to make this attachment a lot stronger. The part I'm going to demonstrate about arms is adding claws. You can take your clay, form it into like little fingers or claws, and then you can score and slip them on the surface. That is totally something you can do. That's a really neat little detail to add. You're going to hear me say this a couple times, but try to make your details three-dimensional, right? This is a three-dimensional project. What can you do to make those features look 3D on your monster. So can you add claws? Yes, you can. About legs. Now, there are a couple things you can consider for a leg. If your monster doesn't have legs, maybe it has feet. So to make a foot that just is on the front of the body, just take a piece of clay, shape it with your fingers. Again, it shouldn't be thicker than your thumb. And we're going to end up scoring this, and I'm going to attach it somewhere down here on the front. And I'm going to get some slip on there, and then I can put it right on the surface. So there is, you know, it's a foot. It's not a leg, but it's a foot. And of course I can add details to it. I can put pressure into it to make it look a little unique. Don't just leave it plain. Add something. Could you add claws? Sure. The other way to do a foot is, or a leg, is to actually take a coil, kind of flatten it a little bit, and definitely flatten this edge right here. This part's actually going to go underneath the body of the monster, so the leg's going to stick out like that. I know it looks a little cartoony. Granted, this is, you know, just a demo. But why do we need to have this overlapping? Because again, we're trying to increase the surface area of where these pieces of clay will attach together. That's going to make the attachment so much stronger. Because again, I don't want to attach it right on the front, and then we have to blend this all together. Okay, continuing on with the rest of this leg, what I did was I took a fettling knife and actually chopped off the front. So all I need to do is score and slip to attach the front part of this foot here. Score and slip it. And obviously you want to let the slip set up, but now we have little feet and we have a leg. So that's an example for a leg, but you know, there's so many possibilities, right? Imagine how I would do the legs for that one, right? If your monster doesn't have wings, be sure to watch this part because it might give you some ideas for other attachments. Now to do wings, one way is to take a piece of clay, flatten it with a rolling pin, just like this. Don't make it too thin, right? We got about 1/4 inch thick here. What I did was I drew out the shape I want, and then I can use my fettling knife to cut the shape out. The shape for the wing, and I cleaned up the edges a little bit. Now I could always put some textures on the back or on the front. I could always put some textures after I attach it to the monster, but think about where it's going to go. And again, I need to think about the surface area. So this area right here is not thick enough. What's gonna make this wing a little stronger in terms of its attachment is having it actually overlap a little bit on the back of the monster. Now this wing is a little big, but imagine if I had 2 of them, right? And so again, thinking about where they're going to attach, I need to score, and I need to score obviously the back side as well. Make sure you score that really well. Put some slip on it. I'm pushing it onto the back of the clay, but then make sure you also blend it in. Now, if you don't want to smooth it out completely onto the body, that's fine, but really make sure you let the slip set up. So that's one way to deal with a wing. All right, let's think about tails. Can your monster have 2 tails? Can it have 3 tails? Yes, it might just have 1 tail. So what can you do for a tail? Whenever you form a tail, you might want to just start with a piece of clay. I just shaped this piece of clay by hand. I took a coil and I kind of flattened it a little bit because again, we don't want this to be super thick, and then I just pulled the end to make it kind of pointy. So with this monster here, I was thinking of just having the tail kind of, you know, start in the back of the butt and just have it hug the side of the body. That's a possibility. So again, like everything we've been doing, we need to score and slip. Now, do we have to score everywhere? No, but think about the area that needs to have that scoring and slipping so it stays on the surface. And it's okay if you have a little bit of slip seeping out. You can actually use that to your advantage. So what I'm gonna do now is actually just blend this together for the tail. And I could always add some scales and some sort of texture to it. I know it's really small, you don't really see it that well, but that's one idea for a tail. Now let me peel that off because I'm going to show you another method. With the second method here, I took this piece of clay, and I know it kind of looks like a misshapen snake here, but this is the part that would go slightly under the booty, and then this part would actually touch the back of the monster. So let's see if I can pull that off here in this demo. Because again, thinking about surface area, more surface area, it means the monster is, you know, the feature is going to stay on the monster's body. And all those score marks, you can always blend them and remove them as you go. So you don't worry about, you know, trying to be super, super neat with your score marks. Some students get really obsessive about trying to make their score marks super, super neat. Now, I guess I should have had a longer tail for this, and I know it just kind of looks like a big worm on the back. Oh, could be a worm. Could you turn your tail into another monster? Certainly, right? It's a monster, right? Lots of possibilities. So I'm blending that together, and again, I would have to do a little bit of work on the inside here, just trying to get that kind of blended out. But that's another method for a tail. Horns and ears. I know my monster is just a mess, but it's a demo. Anyways, we have one of the horns here. So you could make a horn by manipulating the clay into a form that you want. You could do a bent horn like this. You could do a cute little horn like that. And let me show you something. I do have some of these in the classroom. It's a metal rib, but it's serrated, which means it is so much easier to score the surface instead of using your needle tool. Your choice, but I actually really like using this in lieu of a needle tool. And there we go, scored and slipped. Can this have texture? Yes, it could. Let's attach that other one, scoring here using that serrated rib, and score, slip. There we go. Now I know it's got two different sized horns, but that's okay. Now let's talk about ears. Does a monster have to have ears? No, but something you could do, you could take a piece of clay and again, go back to your plan, but you could manipulate the clay into the form of an ear, and you could flatten this top part here. But again, thinking about the surface area, how is that going to attach to the head of your monster? Or is the ear going to sit somewhere completely different? Is it going to have ears on the back? Could it have ears on the back? Oh, yes, it could. That seems kind of weird, but that's fine. It's a monster. So there I am attaching a really big ear. This is not adding an appendage. This is cutting out the mouth. But I want to show you how to do this because you could then add teeth if you want to. Again, you could put teeth on the outside of the monster, but I'm going to just show you how to cut out the mouth. So what you need to do, go back to your plan, and what you'll do is take a look at what you have here on the head, and I want to cut out a mouth. I'm going to go for a really wide mouth. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my needle tool and I'm just drawing where I need to cut, okay? I want to cut this out. Now, when you're ready to cut out the mouth, and the mouth can be an air hole for the monster so it doesn't blow up. That's totally fine. But want to make sure that your fettling knife is clean. I've noticed clay doesn't cut very well when it's dirty. So make sure your fettling knife is all clean. And then what you do is you take the fettling knife and you kind of insert it into the head or wherever, the body perhaps, and you can just carefully just move the knife. You don't really have to do like a cutting motion because it kind of cuts like butter because again of how soft. Even if the clay is going a little leather hard, you should be able to cut it out. Now, getting the piece out of there can be a bit of a challenge. Depends how narrow that opening is. So I just took this other tool just to peel out that piece of clay. So now I have a mouth. Now, if I want that to be a little wider, I could even just get my fingers in there and work with it, or I could trim it some more with the fettling knife, but definitely do some cleanup. Don't just cut the mouth open and go, okay, I'm done. No, 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 no. You can do stuff to it. You could add teeth, you could add lips, I want to make this mouth a little bit wider. I don't want to cut off